Gata for the sound of the mind calm, body at ease, breathing quiet, sentiment benevolent. Dharma friends, sitting still in vital silence, wanting nothing, we practice eco-Buddhism together. The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of non-violent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma rain. Om Amoga Vairochana Maha Mudra Mani Padma Jivala Pravartaya Please take a moment to straighten your mats and cushions and then stand facing the altar for chanting of the three refuges. So bringing our hands palm to palm at heart center, Hapchang of sincere heart, gazing at the altar. We will first take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha in Sino-Korean, keeping with our tradition, and then a second time spoken in English. So even if you do not know the words of the chant, just throw your voice in with the sound. I go for refuge to the Buddha.
I go for refuge to the Buddha.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
And realize the great way.
And realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will penetrate the teachings.
I will penetrate the teachings.
And uncover oceans of wisdom.
And uncover oceans of wisdom.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many.
And transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
And transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
Now please remain standing just for a moment while I read our ancestor dedication. On this first day of December 2024, we acknowledge that this land where our temple buildings stand has been the home of Native peoples, the Potawatomi, the Odawa, and the Ojibwe, the Council of the Three Fire Tribes, and also of Black Americans. We know that this neighborhood used to be a historically Black neighborhood during times of racial segregation and oppression. For our own awakening, and for the awakening of all life, may the benevolent energies of our meditation, chanting, and full presence here at this service this morning extend to all beings on this planet and throughout time and space. May there be deepening of our interbeing. May peace prevail and wars cease. And let us bow 3 times. Now please return to your places for another shorter period of meditation, about 5 minutes. Please join me in some simple stretching. Good morning. My name is Jagwa. I'm one of the Dharma teachers here in Ann Arbor. It's nice to see everybody, especially on a snowy first day of December. Seems like winter has arrived a little bit early. Do we have any folks here for the first time? Oh, quite a few. Okay, well, welcome, especially. Thanks for being here. So I was listening to WCBN, the college radio station, on my drive in this morning, and I was running a little bit late. And it was, I guess, maybe the gospel hour. I don't usually listen on Sunday mornings, I guess. And there was this really catchy song with the soloist, and he was singing about Jesus, and he was singing about all the things that he gets from this relationship with Jesus, but also kind of this big picture, like Jesus has given us water and shelter and forgiveness. And then there's this like 4-part gospel choir, and they say, I'm so grateful for who you are. They're singing to Jesus. So after every time the soloist says a thing, then the gospel choir responds. And then there's going to be singing today, so I figured we might as well get into it. Then the soloist said a line that really struck me. He said about Jesus, he made a way out of no way. I never heard that before. I was actually raised Catholic, but we didn't have any gospel choirs at the Catholic Church. But that line really struck me, a way out of no way, because that felt like a Zen teaching. I really resonated with that one. And I think the topic that I'm going to talk about today is a little bit related to that, making a way out of no way. And so I'm going to talk a little bit today about specifically one of the 6 paramitas. The paramitas are 6 perfections of character that we cultivate in our Buddhist practice. And I'm going to talk about Kshanti paramita, which is translated a few different ways, and we're going to talk about that. But one way that it's often translated is patience. And then I'm going to tell, hopefully we'll have time for, before the singing, for a couple of stories from our Korean Buddhist tradition. Because I realize we don't always share some of the really interesting history. And I've been kind of thinking about, this sounds a little funny today. I've been thinking about ancestors and sort of taking a bigger, broader view of human history. So we'll see kind of what they have to say about patience and fortitude from our Dharma ancestors in the past. So when I sat down to organize my thoughts about this topic, this memory came to me from a conversation that I had with a friend in grad school about over 10 years ago now, I think. I was really wrestling at the time with the question of whether I wanted to try to have children. And one of the things that I was particularly struggling with was climate change, kind of thinking about what type of future a new person on this planet would have beyond my lifetime. And I remember my friend kind of gave me some in-your-face wisdom, because my friend said, you know, whether you decide to have children or not, you don't get to opt out of the problem of climate change. It's like, oh, yeah, you're right. You know, I had kind of built it up in my mind as this really deep moral choice, which I still feel in some ways that it is. But I had been kind of ignoring the bigger picture. I'm still kind of here, I'm still responsible. And that stuck with me for, well, obviously many years later. And I think in some ways it relates to one of the sayings that our founding teacher, Samu Sunam, whose portrait you can see if you don't know who he is, just outside the door to the left there. He was a monk in Korea before he emigrated to North America. And he used to say, because I know this because my teacher Haji tells me this, you can't get kicked out of the universe. You can't get kicked out of the universe. And I think about this phrase, a lot of times it feels like a comfort, like no matter kind of what thing I've screwed up in my life, it's like, okay, well, no matter what, can't get kicked out of the universe. That's good. I got that going for me. But it's a little bit of that in your face wisdom too. You can't get kicked out of the universe. So now what are you going to do about that? You know, you can't extricate yourself from these conditions that our lives in this moment and this time in human history are really the material that we have to work with. And we're going to hear in some other difficult circumstances that our ancestors faced in those stories a little bit later. So those were some of the things that were kind of swirling for me, and maybe the context will be clear as I go and talk a little bit now about Kshanti Paramita. So first, let me just start with what are these 6 paramitas before we look at the one in particular. So the 6 paramitas, as far as I know, although I could be mistaken about this, I believe these were actually kind of codified after the Buddha's death, but not that long after. So the monks who were practicing in our tradition were always doing the work of sort of capturing what those teachings had been and passing them on. And so the 6 paramitas, or 6 paramis, which is another translation that you'll hear, are these sort of wonderful qualities of human potential that we can cultivate. So these are the 6 in our tradition. 1, Dana Paramita, may I be generous and helpful. 2, Shila Paramita, may I be pure and virtuous. 3, Kshanti Paramita, may I be patient. May I be able to bear and forbear the wrongs of others. 4, Virya Paramita, may I be strenuous, energetic, and persevering. 5, Dhyana Paramita, may I practice meditation and attain concentration and oneness to serve all beings. 6, Prajna Paramita, may I gain wisdom and be able to give the benefit of my wisdom to others. So you can see here in this translation, we already have a couple of meanings of this perfected quality: patience and forbearance. Specifically, it says, may I be able to bear and forbear the wrongs of others. So I did a little bit of research, and there's a wonderful podcast that's popular in our community, the Zen Studies podcast. And there was an episode that I had found about Kshanti Paramita that gets into a little bit of some of the ways that this concept can be translated. So I wanted to share. So Kshanti is often translated as patience, which we heard. But this is not just passive forbearance, sort of turning the other cheek in all circumstances kind of thing, not doing anything about whatever the situation might be. Although certainly there is an aspect of sort of discernment in this concept of forbearance. We think about when we know whether to say something in a difficult situation, we're kind of hopefully doing that mindful work of being a little bit patient, and maybe we realize I shouldn't say something. So there is maybe a little bit of this holding back, but it is in a mindful sense, not just a kind of endurance for endurance's sake sense. And one of the kind of root words of this in Sanskrit is kasam. So I did a little bit of looking into what is this word related to. And of course, my reference point as an English speaker is more in Latin. And so the Latin related word is humus. And you could probably guess what that means. It's like earth. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. So ground, earth, also to be strong, also to forgive, also to resist. So there's a lot more complex kind of notions tied up in this word in Sanskrit than just sort of patience as on the sort of face value. So the translation that or the definition that I found that maybe most captured it for me was to continue to do the right things without getting distracted in spite of difficult circumstances. To continue to do the right things without getting distracted in spite of difficult circumstances. And we kind of see some of those meanings of the word in that description. The humility of earth, the strength of without getting distracted, resisting even or forgiving, depending on what the situation is calling for, keeping going despite difficult circumstances. So maybe in this context, then we can think of Kshanti Paramita is asking us to really find our personal edge of kind of pushing our limits. What is our capacity and our endurance to do the right things without getting distracted? And maybe also our capacity for continuing those efforts to self-cultivate so that we have a little bit of that well of patience and wisdom and experience to draw from in the midst of whatever difficult circumstances we might be facing in our lives. And as the teacher in the podcast, Domio Burke, I think it was, pointed out, there's kind of a reality check in this teaching because it acknowledges that no matter what other perfections of character we think we have been cultivating, there's always going to be some aspect of difficult circumstances and suffering and sort of headwinds that we will encounter. And so no matter how diligent we think we are at organizing our lives or our practice, we kind of can't get kicked out of the universe, right? There's still going to be this challenge that we face. And I was kind of taken by this idea of Kshanti being something that we can train, because as some of you might have heard me talk about, I like to go to the gym and lift weights. This has become my hobby over the last couple of years. So I thought, okay, I can relate to that aspect of this very slow progression over time, sometimes almost imperceptible. Several times a week, that weight still feels just as heavy as it did the week before. And then one day, it doesn't feel quite as heavy. Of course, then you just add more weight to the bar because then it always, it's sort of the purpose is it's always as the heaviest you could do. But there's a kind of interesting phenomenon of this sort of non-linear progression. And I think that really resonates for me because I think my spiritual practice and my spiritual cultivation feels a little bit like the same thing. In my life, I keep running into the same brick wall over and over and over again, and I respond the same way. And then one day it's like, oh, there's that wall again. Now I recognize it. Let me try to do something a little bit different. So this sort of non-linear cultivation, but it's still happening. And it's really interesting. So I'm going to nerd out with you a little bit about exercise science for just one moment because it is relevant. So strength, in the sense of if you're a strength athlete, like you do powerlifting or something like that, is actually the expression of your adaptation minus your fatigue. So at different points in the month or the day, maybe you've been working out a lot and you're just kind of tired. You don't have a lot of reserves. Your muscles are a little bit tired. So and you can't lift the thing you could lift last week. And you think, I'm not as strong as I was. That's not actually true. You just have a little bit of fatigue masking your adaptation. Other times, man, you got really great sleep and you just never felt stronger and your adaptation is really shining. So a little bit like kind of the stresses in our life. Sometimes we can really show up in a mindful way and we think, that wasn't so hard. I did the right thing. Let's see, what was it? I did the right thing without getting distracted in spite of difficult circumstances. Other times, maybe our reserves are a little bit less. There's more stress in our life, or the situation is particularly challenging for our particular pile of karma, and we can't express our best intentions. But the other interesting thing that's happening at the cellular level when you're exercising is you're actually building more mitochondria. Everyone remembers what the mitochondria does, right? It's the powerhouse of the cell. And so over time, you actually, by moving your body, it's kind of fascinating to me, you're creating more energy at the cellular level. I didn't know that was possible, but apparently that's what's happening. So I tell you all of this because I wanted to share then this passage from The Way of the Bodhisattva. Because of course we have this archetype of the Bodhisattva, the person who kind of devotes all of their efforts over endless lifetimes to the benefit of other beings above themselves. And I'm going to read a passage from the Shantideva text, because I think it's about this spiritual endurance, but it also is a way of saying that there's no kind of magic in this cultivation. It really is a little bit like the exercise that we might be doing. We're just kind of slowly getting our reps in, and we're building a little bit more energy to meet the situation, even at the cellular level. Okay, so this is what Shantideva said back in 700 AD, one translation. The cause of happiness comes rarely, and many are the seeds of suffering. But if I have no pain, I'll never long for freedom. Therefore, O my mind, be steadfast. There's nothing that does not grow light through habit and familiarity. Putting up with the little cares, I'll train myself to bear with great adversity. You want to hear it again? That's kind of a good one. Okay. The cause of happiness comes rarely, and many are the seeds of suffering. But if I have no pain, I'll never long for freedom. Therefore, O my mind, be steadfast. There's nothing that does not grow light through habit and familiarity. Putting up with little cares, I'll train myself to bear with great adversity. Nice little poem. Okay, so that's kind of the didactic part, Kshanti Paramita. And now I'm going to tell a couple of stories. I have one from the distant past and one from the more recent past. Maybe I'll start from the more recent past. So this is a wonderful book that we study in our seminary called Makers of Modern Korean Buddhism. And you have heard me say, and if you've been coming around for a while, you've heard that our particular lineage of Buddhism is Korean Sun, which is the same word as Zen, although Zen is the Japanese word. It's just more familiar in America, so we tend to say Zen, but it's the same thing. It means meditation practice. And it's a chapter about each of the people in the first half of the 20th century that were very integral to kind of helping Korean Buddhism to, in some ways, reestablish itself and then to continue on into the modern era. But if you know any Korean history, you'll know that particularly the first half of the 20th century was a very challenging time in Korea. So there was a period of colonial occupation of the country by the Japanese in the first half of the 20th century. And there was a lot of strife, particularly in the Buddhist traditions, because Japan wanted its own aspects of Japanese Buddhism practice over and above the Korean aspects. And so there was a lot of tension. And so a couple of the teachers that you're going to hear about were teachers who were alive at that time and were really dealing with how to keep what they felt were their really core Korean Buddhist values going in during this colonial occupation time. Okay, so let's see what I wanted to read first. Okay, so the first person you're going to hear a little bit about is a teacher named Man Gong. Man Gong became a pioneer in teaching Zen Buddhism to lay people and to nuns. So I always have special appreciation for him because I think, I don't know if I would be here without teaching Zen Buddhism to lay people. This was a radical departure for his time, since the traditional Zen communities, which had been banished from the cities during Japanese occupation, had been insular and had not much been in contact with society. So let's see. Yes. Okay, so the story that you're going to hear is Man Gong in 1937 meeting with the Japanese governor. Okay. At the 1937 meeting, it seems the subtle pressures of the past became more explicit. A statement was made by the governor which said, Korean Buddhism would do much better to follow Japanese Buddhism and cooperate with it. Suddenly, Man Gong got up from his seat and strode over to where the governor was. With his fist, he struck the governor's table and gave out a deafening Zen shout, "Cats!" Then he said, the universe of the ultimate truth was originally clear and empty. Where did the mountains, rivers, and earth come from? Man Gong continued to speak to the shocked governor and the abbots. For what reason should Korean Buddhism follow Japanese Buddhism? Any person who forces the monks to break their precepts will go straight to hell. To many observers, it was the turning point in the self-renewal of Korean Buddhism, and a unified Choge order was formed in 1941, which continues today. So I kind of struck by this little historic anecdote of him standing up to what he felt was the right thing to do at that time, standing up for his principles. And then there's other little interesting tidbit here. It says, both Man Gong and Yongsong, who you're going to hear about in a moment, another prominent figure at that time period, are well known. Both repeatedly encouraged Korean monks to strengthen their traditional spirit and resist attempts to subvert it. Not much has been preserved to show how various Zen teachers might have encouraged resistance against the colonial occupation, though it is reasonable to assume that they did not do so in public assemblies for fear of being spied upon. The oral tradition, however, suggests that Zen monks were part of an informal network of dissenters and subversives. And then we hear a little bit of Yongsong, so his kind of fellow teacher and contemporary, who was a bit older. And this is a letter that he wrote in 1928 when he was 65. Really talking about how much this time period was weighing on him. This year I have fulfilled my responsibility for the Sun monasteries, but I am unable to give further assistance. I have struggled with my bare hands to manage business and in the city of Nanam in Hamgyong province in order to keep the house in Seoul. In addition to this, I have just embarked on the translation of the Huayan Sutra. Yet sometimes I have no will to carry on, nor do I feel like having the capacity for the work. Furthermore, there is no single monk suitable for the Sun monasteries. Is this the problem of our time, or is this my fate? What can be done about it? I am afraid that Buddha's Dharma disappears by itself. I am getting old, my energy dissipating, and it is difficult even to walk. My body and mind are exhausted. This is because I was born in the time when Buddha's teaching is dead, which is due to my sin. The current situation of Buddhism is devastating, but no monks in Seoul pay attention. They just get together to greedily satiate their appetites. In the midst of this danger, I am left with various bills that need to be paid. Therefore, even the word Buddha has become a pain to me. It's interesting. He actually lived and taught for 10 more years after that letter was written in the late 1920s. And I was really touched every time I read that, because I think it sounds so contemporary. And yet, when we even look at a text as old as the Diamond Sutra, there's reference hundreds and hundreds of years ago. In the future, when anyone hears these words, will anyone understand? So this work in the face of difficulties, the doing the right thing in difficult circumstances without being distracted, is evident all throughout our Buddhist ancestors' history. So this last story, I'll tell you, comes from the book Thousand Peaks, Korean Zen Tradition and Teachers. I'm not sure this one is still in print, but you can find used copies of it. And this is just a short story, but this one is something I can add a little bit of additional color to because I have seen the historical object that they're talking about. Okay. So this one goes back to 1231. Starting in 1231, the Mongols launched no fewer than 6 major invasions of Korea within a period of 30 years. The subsequent establishment of the Yuan dynasty, 1271 to 1368, in China by the Mongols meant that for nearly 2 centuries, they were a large presence in the affairs of Korea. One direct impact of the Mongol invasions on Buddhism was the burning of the first edition of the Tripitaka Koreana during the invasion of 1231 to 32. So the Tripitaka Koreana is a series of Buddhist sutras carved on wood blocks that are about this big. There were 80,000 of them, and the first version was destroyed. And so this is a little story about how they were recreated, and I'll tell you about, you can actually see them today. The royal court fled to Ganghwa Island just off the Korean coast. There it proceeded to recreate for itself life as it had been on the mainland before the invasion. On Ganghwa Island, a second edition of the Tripitaka, carved on wooden blocks as a national prayer against the invaders, was completed in 1251. The 81,258 wooden blocks, each 9.5 inches wide, 29 inches long, and 2.5 inches thick, are engraved with scriptures on both sides. The wood for the blocks is said to have been imported from China, even though Korea was at war with northern China. It was kept submerged in salt water for 3 years, and then in fresh water for another 3 years. The wood was then buried underground for 3 years and then dried in open air for 3 additional years. The actual engraving of the sutras took 16 years. Today, this Tripitaka is the oldest and best preserved of all Chinese translations of the entire Buddhist canon of teachings. It is housed at Haeunsa Temple and remains Korea's most important Buddhist treasure. So if you go to Haeunsa Monastery in South Korea, which a couple of us had the opportunity to do 2 years ago, it's kind of up in the mountains. And as you drive through the front gate of the monastery, there is a river off to the left. It was somewhat dry when we were there, and there's huge boulders kind of in the middle of the river. And then you go up this narrow, winding road through some of the formal gates. And then there's clusters of buildings kind of carved out of the side of this mountain. And there's a beautiful kind of traditional looking Korean building, wood, with a slanted roof. And that's where the Tripitaka Koreana is held. And you can go in and see it. It's interesting because it's wood blocks, which you heard were prepared for 9 years, saltwater, freshwater, burying in the earth, and then carving for 16 years. They have to be very careful about humidity. And so it's, I think, a limestone kind of dirt floor in this building. And then special little dehumidifier machines plugged in all around this big hall. And it was raining on the day that we went, so we had to be very careful about any water on our raincoats and shake them out, leave them outside. And then the monks that are kind of caretakers of the space are all wearing like plastic overcoats. So you can't touch anything, of course, but you can walk down these floor to ceiling wooden shelves in which these kind of larger than book plates are all stacked through. Which I'm not good at arithmetic, but 1231 is how many years ago?
A lot.
A lot, thank you, yes.
Roughly.
Several hundred. About 1,000 years, almost, yeah. Amazing. So, yeah, I was been thinking about those people on the island importing wood. I assume there probably wasn't that many trees on the island. And then first the blocks had to be made, and then the soaking of them, and then the carving over many years. And they believed that there was multiple skilled carvers that created these to get down to 80-something thousand of them. Just to have this record of the Buddha's teachings. I can't think of a better example of the keeping going in seemingly impossible circumstances. And so sometimes when I feel really challenged about the circumstances of our world, I try to remember that story. And so that's why I wanted to tell it to you. And also because it's important to know about our ancestors, because we literally would not be sitting in this room if they hadn't done a lot of the things that they have done. So, okay, well, that's the stories for today. We have a song.
Oh, I think you have one.
Yes, I do. Okay, and then do we have our person here who's going to sing with us? Oh, hi. Okay, so Haju had asked me to sing this song last weekend, but I was getting over being sick and being out of town, so I begged off until this weekend. So now I'll sing it for you. So you're going to hear a song called Give by a man named Paramita Nat Needle, who was a Dharma teacher here in the 1990s. He now lives in Massachusetts. He's a piano teacher. He has a website, so you can listen to his music. You can also hire him for piano lessons, according to his website. And he wrote a whole songbook of American Buddhist kind of folk music that's really lovely. We sing it with the kids a lot at Peace Camp. So you can hear that. And it has a lot of relation, I think, to the song that we're going to do as a group, which is Simple Gifts. Is that right? Yeah. And I think both of these songs have a spirit of that kind of endurance or fortitude, kind of animating them. Okay. Give when you are lonely. Give when you're feeling low. Give with a heart full of gratitude. Your attitude means more than you know. So give like the sky gives the rainbow. Give like the rain gives the dew. Oh, why waste the years wrapped up in fears? You've only this moment to live. Open your heart and give. So if we have a chorus, then there's like another kind of doo-wop part underneath that, but you just have to use your imagination. Okay, so that's that one. And then remind me your name again?
Josh.
Josh. Josh, would you like to talk about the song you're going to lead for us? Come up. Yeah, come up.
Yeah, so how did you ask me to help prepare Simple Gifts for us? It's an American traditional song from the early 1800s. You might recognize it from Aaron Copland's Appalachian Spring. That's one of the more popular iterations of it. Thank you.
Do you want to sit here or are you good? You stand?
I'll say it like that.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
Actually, can I grab one of those too? No, you should remember it. Thank you.
Do you want the microphone? Okay. All right.
Joshua, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, so my name is Josh. I started me and my wife Lily started coming here a little bit over the summer, and then we moved to Detroit, so we were just attending virtually for a couple months. But recently we've started making the drive back. And so I'm a musician. I'm an orchestra conductor is what I normally do. So not really a singer, but I try my best. But so I think what we'll do is I'll sing through the first verse, and then we'll repeat the entire first verse together, and then we'll keep going our way through. Sound good?
Yeah.
Cool. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we will not be ashamed to turn. Turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning, we come round right. Verse 1 again. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we will not be ashamed to turn. Turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning, we come round right. 'Tis the gift to have friends and a true friend to be. 'Tis the gift to think of others, not just me. And when we hear how others really think and feel, we will all live together in love that is real. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we will not be ashamed to turn. Turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning, we come round right. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be fair, 'tis a gift to wake and breathe the morning air, and each day walk upon the noble path we choose. 'Tis a gift that we pray we will never lose. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we will not be ashamed to turn. Turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning, we come round right. Good job, everybody.
I think that's all for today. Unless there's one or two questions, comments, another song.
Another song.
Another song? Do you have a suggestion?
No.
Another song.
How about Bobby? Do you have a song, Bobby?
Do I have a song? Not right now.
I don't think I know any other songs.
We know a refuge song for the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
You do?
Yeah,
You want to sing it?
sure. It goes, I take refuge in the Buddha. Wait.
Well,
I remember the Dharma and Sangha one. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya.
All right, one more
Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sangaya.
One more. You guys want to try to sing it?
Yeah.
Okay, will you sing and we'll sing with you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the way of community and mindful harmony. Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sangaya. Yeah.
anyone else feel the waiver?
I think we got some chickens for quiet.
Well, preview. Josh, are you organizing a choir? Did I hear?
Yeah, we're still kind of figuring it out, but look for it in the new year.
And
There's a
I saw a
sign-up
sign-up
sheet
sheet.
in the foyer if you're interested, bringing more music to the temple. So playing an instrument, singing.
You also teach people how to sing?
Thank you so much for your musical offerings and for being here. I think we have some announcements.
Yep.
Okay. Would you like the microphone?
Okay, so I'm going to do this a little differently today than you're used to. I usually ad lib, but now we have kind of more of a selection. And I can't get to everything, of course, because it's like 5 minutes long. But we're going to kind of switch things around and tell you some things maybe you didn't know. Because, yeah, there's all sorts of things on here. One thing I just thought I would bring up right away is that this Friday and Saturday, which is 7 p.m. to 12 noon. Here at this temple, we are going to have an introductory meditation course, which is somewhat like an overnight retreat, I believe. But from what I recall, it's more about learning more of the postures and maybe even some of the like breathing techniques that we use to count with. And so again, that's just this weekend. If you'd like to sign up, there are sheets right up here in the foyer. Let's see. And then I have a question sort of about one for probably you, Haju. I see that we're having a year-end candle lighting service, 8 to 10 p.m.
What do I think?
This,
Oh, yeah.
this end of year candle lighting service. Is that December 3rd? That's like Tuesday?
No, it's December 31st.
31st.
New Year's Eve.
Okay.
It's the New Year's Eve service.
Sure, that makes it all a lot easier to remember for you guys too. It's the day before the next announcement, which is New Year's Day service, January 1st at 11 a.m. So think about it, like if you're here and you want to come, it's not going to be at 10. It's actually 11:30, but it's a Sunday usually, is it?
No, New Year's Day, I think, is a Wednesday this year.
Oh, okay. Wednesday and the night before, it's so 8 to 10 p.m. Okay, several pages. Oh yeah, some of the new items I never really told you about much. So I'll just read it here. In addition to our services and events, Temple also serves as a training seminary and monastery. We offer programs designed for lay people in an urban setting to help support daily practice and study, as well as programs for those interested in full-time Zen training to become a Dharma teacher or priest. Please inquire at Tana, who's probably in California or Chicago.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is from our Chicago bulletin,
Oh,
and that's who's in Chicago.
oh, okay.
Talk tomorrow Monday.
Yeah.
Interested in.
Oh, okay. Beginning in January. So if anyone's thinking that they'd like to join any of those programs, there's several. And I know we have Dharma Recovery.
Recovered Dharma will meet in the historic Buddha Hall at noon today. Up the steps, the big yellow building. Take your shoes off inside and keep going straight. And you'll run right into us.
Okay. Yes. And there's one other thing. Oh, I meant to ask Haju about. Today we're having kind of successive groups. Are we still having openings like for the discussion
listening
about the
session?
election? Yeah.
Yeah, I can talk about it.
Okay.
So we are offering an open listening session for post-election share. It's not going to be really a discussion, but more just actually listening to what's on people's minds or what they're feeling right now. I believe there's going to be one at noon, which if you give me your information, I might be able to quickly forward you the Zoom link when I get home. Otherwise, 3 p.m. So if you're interested, you can ask me after service. Some of you may have already signed up. We sent out an email about it about a week ago. So, yeah.
Very good. Thank you. And I also wanted to let Haju come over here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We're in the midst of our fall fundraising. Every fall, we have specific focus, and for the last actually 2 or 3 falls, we put in a whole raise money to have a water abatement system through the backyard and into the city wastewater. Now we are raising funds for replacing this broken stone pathway upon which we enter. I've seen people who are disabled coming in and having quite a time, so we really want to get that fixed. We are also installing a whole new window and means of egress in one of our buildings. We're raising money for scholarships, so people who would like to do training programs, take the meditation course, go to Peace Camp, who have low income, we can help them with that. And we are also improving our sound system, because some of the people who are at a distance and check in every Sunday have been complaining. They said, we can hardly hear. One woman said, I stayed home because I couldn't hear when I was here. so I thought I would be able to hear better. So we're trying to get a better sound system. And then we're going to be continuing to work on our landscaping so that the temple can be a pilgrimage place for people to come and be in the yard and a quiet place, even learn to garden and help with the gardening. So we're trying to raise $28,600 for all of those. And we already have raised almost 7 by about 12 people for the 7. So we're hoping that everyone will give something, like, so that we can get to the $28,600. So there in the foyer, there's this little card where you would fill it out, and then you could pay by credit or check or cash. We've had all of those. Yeah. I appreciate very much if you can support it. It's for really all of us. Yeah. Thank you.
I have one also. If anyone would like to volunteer to shovel snow, help us shovel snow on the days when it snows, we get a snow shoveling crew together. We usually do it early morning, like if the snow has fallen overnight. So contact me if you want to be on the snow shoveling text message list. We'll send you a text message. We'll get a group together. You can stay overnight at the temple the night before. We shovel usually around like 6 a.m. And then you can have breakfast also at the temple.
All invited. It's fun to shovel snow together when there's lots of people. And here's the music at the temple sign-up board. So if any of you are interested, please carefully print your names and we will continue to get organized. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's end with the 4 brief vows then. Please repeat after me. All beings, one body.
All being one body.
I vow to liberate.
I vow to liberate.
Blind passions, one root.
Blind passions, one root.
I vow to terminate.
I vow to terminate.
Dharma gates, one mind.
Dharma gates, one mind.
I vow to penetrate.
I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha.
The great way of Buddha.
I vow to realize.
I vow to realize.
So now please straighten your mats and cushions, and we'll end with 3 formal bows in front of the altar. Would you like us to put away mats and cushions? Is there yoga?
Is there yoga? I do not know. I think we should put them away. They might be running around.
Okay, so the mats and cushions that are touching the red carpet can stay where they are. Otherwise, mats on this side of the room neatly stacked on the red stage, and mats and cushions on this side of the room. Brown cushions on the red shelves, and mats in the back corner. Oh, sure. Oh, and one other quick announcement for those of you with kids in your life. Next Sunday is our All Sangha service. We raise your children to and help do children's activities. If you don't already know, you should check it out. Oh,